All right, all right, all right. Welcome in. How is everybody? Good. Talkative group. I love it. It's a full moon. Everyone's wild and crazy. It's probably not a full moon. Who knows these things? Is this thing even on? Sure, it's on. It's on, right? Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? I know. My audio was blowing up. Absolutely.
Well, I gotta be louder if you're watching online. They won't stop talking. I can't. I've lost control.
No, I kid. All right, welcome. How is everybody? Good? I trust. It's good to see you all. All right, we're going to hop in. There's a lot to cover in chapter 2, and I've been reading for a couple days, so it's been good. I'm going to share just some resources first. That I handed out that staple thingamabob. That's from, it's called the IVP Pentateuch Dictionary. They call them the big black dictionaries because they're black and they're big, and they're like they're like 6 of them, and it's by InterVarsity Press. If you're interested, you can type in IVP Bible Dictionary, and you'll see them all there. They're very helpful, very quick and easy, so to speak. Another thing that I've been reading that I want to just share with you, if you're online and you like resources or not, this is by the Jewish Publication Society. This is the Torah commentary. So this is written from a Jewish perspective, which I think is just very helpful. These are really nice commentaries, and you can tell they're Jewish because they open up backwards, right? Yeah, and you read it like you would the Torah. So they're wonderful. They're very, very good. I have just Exodus. I don't have the others in the Pentateuch yet. But if you're curious and you want to borrow something like that, just holler at me. I have a bunch of different commentaries. You're welcome to borrow them if you'd like. Another really helpful resource that I've been looking at slowly and I'll hand out later is Carl Rasmussen's Atlas of the Bible. It's by Zondervan. Zondervan is an evangelical publishing house. I think it's actually on Taylor University, on their campus. I think they might have bought them a while ago. But it's beautiful. Look at all these beautiful pictures. Right? Look, it's full color. You get lots of maps. So I'll hand out some of this stuff later. I did some of this. I think it was with Esther. I handed some stuff out of this. I forget though. No, it was Genesis that I think I handed. So I'll hand some stuff up. If you want to take a look at this later, you can too. Figured I'd share some of the things that I've been using and reading. In the same vein of just communication and thoughts, things that I handed out last week, I handed out this timeline of Exodus, which I think was helpful. If you weren't here last week or you want an extra one, I got them right here. I'll put them in the back right here. And that's okay. So that's the timeline. Again, when you try and compile what we think of as like a modern timeline from ancient sources, you got to do not some guesswork per se, but if you're going back there, I got some more stuff for you. There's the timeline, and this is a handout from Exodus. You got to kind of do some guesswork to kind of cobble it together, right? So they're pulling from different things. So that's that. Handed that out last week. And then one more thing is this. That's all right, I got extras. It's yours, take it. And then this other thing by the handbook, I think this is the Jerome Bible Handbook. It's a Catholic resource. And it has an outline of Exodus, which I thought was helpful. It's at the very back there. So, all right, squared away? Yeah, those clips can really help summarize some things and put it nice and succinct. It's very helpful. All right, I have a Bible somewhere for Bible study. I was like, I had it. Mercy. All right. Is it all right if I begin with the word of prayer for us?
We need it.
Yeah, we all need it. We all need it. All right, let's pray. Holy and gracious God, we just slow down for a moment and give you thanks for the day that you've given us. As we gather here, Lord, we ask that we would have a fresh encounter with you this evening. That we would read this story that so many of us are just familiar with. We would just slow down a little bit and perhaps wonder anew what you might do through these words. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. All right, I think I got all the fiddly bits out of my pockets, so I'm not, messing around with everything. Except for my chapstick. There it goes. All right. It snowed twice today. Who knew? Okay. Please work. Test 1. Okay, good. Previously, in Exodus chapter 1, the Israelites are oppressed. That was my summary. Would you add anything to my summary that's probably not adequate? But, you could do the whole entire, little lineage of Joseph at the top. You could do the Israelites are oppressed. You could do the slaughter of the innocents. Right? You can go into some details if you wanted to, but that was my general thought. I think I've shared that I really think I value being able to have a quick summary of a chapter in the Bible just for my ability to look things up. And I think that's part of something that the church should do is teach folks to know these things. So an example I always told people was let me see if I can do it now, was the Gospel of John. Chapter 1 is light and dark, right? That's the theme, and that the Word has become flesh. Chapter 2, I think, was the wedding at Cana. Chapter 3 is Nicodemus. Chapter 4 is the woman at the well. And then I'm going to stop because I don't remember chapter 5. Yeah, but, so I think that's helpful because then you can kind of think about the progression of the book. And we did this for Genesis, right? Does anyone feel like taking a stab at it? Not chapter by chapter, but big broad strokes.
Genesis?
Yeah, what's the first thing you encounter in Genesis?
In the beginning.
Yep, right, so creation narratives.
Yeah.
You got Adam and Eve,
Yeah.
Cain and Abel. Then you could say the next big thing might be Noah.
Yeah.
And then it's the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
Right, and then it's some stuff. And then, it's Abram. And then then you know it because we confess it, right? Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then it's Joseph, and then you're done, right? So it's just kind of helpful to sort of think about those. Question? Yes? Oppressed? Wonderful question. Thank you for raising it. Oppressed means beat down or enslaved or they don't have any rights. You've probably never seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail, have you? No, that's okay. Help, I'm being repressed. It's kind of oppressed, right? Just the idea that oppression.
What is it?
Yeah, it's Monty Python and the Holy Grail. You should look it up. It's great. Ask your parents first. All right, so you think about I'll tell you later. So you think about if it's really hot, you can say, oh, the heat is oppressive today. Or if it's really cold, you can say the cold is oppressive. It's kind of pushing down. Would anyone have a different definition? Did I do good? Good. Okay. All right. So that was previously chapter 1. We will remind ourselves where we are in our story because we're getting ready to move. Right. So in our story, we are somewhere in Hirish, most likely, somewhere in the lower Egypt area. Again, it's lower because of its elevation. So it's lower because it's closer to sea level. The Nile flows right from the south to the north and empties into the Mediterranean. There are some key cities along the way. We talked about last week that they settled on the river valley because of anticipated kind of river flooding, and that allows agriculture to flourish. There are a number of key bodies of water over here, which we should just pay attention to. They might become important later. You have some bitter lakes, and you have the Sea of Suez, the Gulf of Suez, and the Red Sea down this way. If they sound familiar, it's because the Israelites are going to cross them.
Yeah.
This big triangle piece of land is Sinai, the Sinai Wilderness. And I'm forgetting now what it's contemporarily called. Is it the Arabian Desert now? Is that right? Okay, our geography is suffering. That's okay. But it's this big triangle, and then over here is this is Israel, and this is Saudi Arabia, just real big. Okay? So that's where we are in the world. And we're getting ready to move. So let's hop into it. Exodus 2, verses 1 through 10. What I've highlighted here, just to tell you kind of what my eye is drawn to, are some things that I want to talk about. So I'm going to fast forward one, so then I color code them. And lovely. The contrast in this ancient projector will do our best. So those are the things that we're going to talk about. So if there's something that's not in red that you want to talk about, you need to stop me and just say, I have a question about, or I wonder what. Does that make sense? Doing good? If you'll excuse me online, I'm going to just attempt to sharpen this. Maybe. Or maybe I will just ask the congregation to buy me a projector. No one laughed. No one laughed. There wasn't one thing. That's right. Not only do we need a new roof, Pastor Josh needs a new projector. All right. All right. Exodus 2, verses 1 through 10. Now a man from the house of Levi went and married a Levite woman. Feel free to follow along to if you have a different translation. There might be some interesting words. The woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was a fine baby, she hid him 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she got a papyrus basket for him and plastered it with bitumen and pitch. She put the child in it and placed it among the reeds on the bank of the river. His sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him, and the daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe at the river while her attendants walked beside the river. And she saw the basket among the reeds and sent her maid to bring it. When she opened it, she saw the child. He was crying, and she took pity on him. This must be one of the Hebrews' children, she said. Then his sister said to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and get a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, yes. So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages. So the woman took the child and nursed it. When the child grew up, she brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. She named him Moses, because she said, I drew him out of the water. What do you notice? What is the obvious?
That the child's mother nursed it.
Yes, there's a wonderful flip of irony here, right? That the wet nurse is his very own mom. Beautiful. What else?
Well,
Pharaoh's daughter disobeyed and did not kill the baby.
Isn't that also literary irony, right? That
said the Pharaoh's daughter was not
Pharaoh's daughter
told.
did not kill the child.
well, it's an edict from Pharaoh.
Yeah.
So she could say, I should follow through, or here, you take care of this, right? Or do something, but she doesn't.
And she knew he was Hebrew.
Which is an important distinction in the story, right? To, again, how do I say this? Like, you don't want to say, like, there's facial differences, there's ethnic differences, but there are, and it's important to remember that the Hebrew people have a distinct identity, right? Not only in how they dress and the law they keep and the way they conduct themselves and the God they worship, but even just visually, like, they are a distinct people. They're God's people. And so, I think it's an important distinction, although most commentators don't really talk about it a whole lot. But I think she recognizes him as Hebrew.
And like the cartoon you showed us last week, it said when she found the baby, she took him to see it.
Yes.
She just didn't mention anything about giving the child to a woman to nurse.
Uh-huh.
So that was totally left out.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of artistic licensing sometimes they'll take. And I was trying to think about, like, you all remember the Charlton Heston, Ten Commandments, like, you watch that and you go, well, some of that's accurate, and some of it's a little Hollywoody, it's interesting.
So would the child have been circumcised?
It doesn't say, right? And to think critically about that, the law of circumcision is a part of the covenant from Abraham. But Abraham's children are all circumcised. Is that right from your memory as well?
Also, was it done quickly?
It was done on the 8th day or 7th day. I forget off the top of my head.
Okay, so he said, yeah, 3 months.
So maybe he was. It doesn't say. Maybe that's how That's how she knows.
That's how,
Yeah. Looks like an Egyptian. No, he's Hebrew. Right? You never know. Interesting. Other thoughts? Anything else that you saw or noticed? Does anybody have a different translation that translates any of the words that we read very differently? Does anybody have King James Version?
I've got it.
Just curious, what? Let me go back to my darker print here so I can see this. Can you read verse 3 in the King James? Yes, please, since you got it.
And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags of the river's brink.
Complicated, right? Can you read it one more time? I'm going to come closer to these people and I can hear and just, yeah, real slow down with some of those words.
And when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink.
All right, what differences do you notice? Just curious. Okay, so reeds versus flags. The material could be interchangeable, but some differences.
I know irises are called flags.
Yes.
Interesting. Anyone else here? What was the basket called? An ark. Huh. It's interesting. Okay.
Moses' ark.
It is Moses' ark. And that's the word. So here are 6 things I want to draw attention to. We'll talk about these as best we can. I want to talk about the man and the Levite woman. I want to talk about the house of Levi. And then I want to talk about when she could hide him no longer. She got a papyrus basket and plastered it with bitumen and pitch, put the child in it and placed it among the reeds or the flags on the bank of the river. I want to talk about the daughter of Pharaoh. Pharaoh's daughter said to the mom, right, take this child and nurse it for me, and I'll give you your wages. And then the 6th thing I'd like to talk about here is the name Moses, because she said, I drew him out of the water. Okay. So the first thing to recognize is that the man and the woman are not named. They will be named later here in Exodus 6:20. And it says Amram, I think. I better look it up in my Bible since I'm having trouble reading my own. And if I'm having trouble reading it, I know y'all are.
So Moses' mom and dad are named?
6:20 is what it says. So it says, Amram married Jochebed, his father's sister, and she bore him Aaron and Moses, and the length of Amram's life was 137 years. It's his aunt. So, that's interesting. They talk about family trees branching, and some are just real, straight. Never mind. So, that one's sort of like this. But so it's interesting to check their names, because we'll come into that a little bit later. And then 2 is that you recognize that they're Levites, so they're from the house of Levi. So who were the Levites to become?
The men of God.
Yes,
I get what it is.
they became priests. So anybody, Bueller, please, anybody, if someone could grab the book of Numbers, chapter 3, verses 5 through 11. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, the 4th book of the Bible. Find Numbers chapter 3, verses 5 through 11. And when you get it, just start reading. Nice and loud.
The Lord said to Moses, bring the tribe of Levi and present them to Aaron the priest to assist him. They are to perform duties for him and for the whole community at the tent of meeting by doing the work of the tabernacle. They are to take care of all the furnishings of the tent of meeting, fulfilling the obligations of the Israelites by doing the work of the tabernacle. Give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given holy to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests, and anyone else who approaches the sanctuary must be put to death. The Lord also said to Moses, and that was 11.
Yeah, that's fine. I think I'm going to say 10, but I typed 11. And you can keep going because he's going to keep talking about the Levites, but that's the gist of it, right? So when they go to the Promised Land, how many tribes are there? 12, not your question, right? There's 12 tribes, and the land is divided up amongst the tribes. So you get this, tribal land for the Benjamites, a tribal land for Reuben, a tribal land for Gad, a tribal land for Asher, and all the other kiddos. The 12 tribes of Israel come from whom that we've already talked about? Just Jacob, right? Also called Israel. So, I know it gets confusing, but it's important to remember. So Jacob wrestles with God. Jacob has his name changed to Israel. Israel has 12 kids. Do they have more kids than that? Probably. But there's 12 sons, and they're given the land, except for Levi. Levi's not given any land because he is to be his descendants are to be a priesthood. So Moses is from which tribe? Not a trick question. He's a Levite, which I didn't really put together until I began really studying this, right? So he is, when you look at the New Testament, like on who is Moses, he's like top dog, He's got the best pedigree. He's a prophet. He's a priest. He's a king. He's an administrator. He frees the people. He's God's right-hand man. He intercedes on behalf. He goes up to the mountain, receives the law and the 10 Commandments, comes back down. He's always talking to God for the people. He's the archetype of the priest. He's from the tribe of Levi. And so that's who they're going to become. Now, the whole entire thing that happens here, I'm going to move on to point 3 about the kiddo put in the papyrus basket. Moses put in the basket. One is the abandoned hero motif that's seen a lot in ancient literature, and I did some research, so I'm just going to share some really nerdy stuff with you all, if that's okay, and recall some high school classic literature courses, and we can all have PTSD together. All right, so there are a number of heroes who are sort of abandoned in ancient literature. Oedipus is abandoned on the side of a mountain. Heracles or Hercules, he's also abandoned. And Romulus and Remus, the legendary founders of the city of Rome, they're abandoned. They're put in a basket. They are nursed by a she-wolf. That didn't make our Moses story. But there's others as well. Sargon of the Akkadians, I think, and Cyrus. I think I didn't write it down. Cyrus the Great.
Yeah.
He's also abandoned and found. There's some differences, though, between their stories and Moses' story. And one is that you'll notice in our story, there's no, announcement from God saying, look, behold my child, right? There's there's none of that. It's just they're in a terrible political situation. Their ruler, Pharaoh, is insane, and he's killing people, and the mom is desperate. So she takes the baby and puts him in a basket and says, this is better than you just dying. And out of that, right, Moses is delivered. So that's God's providential hand at work. But there's no angel that appears. Right, in our story of Christ, he's baptized and he comes up, and then the angels, the Heavenly Father voice says, behold my son, in him I'm well pleased. There's none of that in our Moses story. Just a key difference. There's no prophecy, there's no fate, there's no oracle, there's no illicit love affair. If you read all the ancient Greeks, it's Zeus really liked women. And then he has this affair, and that's her. You get Hercules, and he's abandoned, but he's a hero of the people. Nope, doesn't happen here. It's just a guy. So I thought that was interesting in this part of our story. So that's the abandoned hero motif. There's some similarities and differences there. He's put in this basket, which is the Hebrew word is literally tavah, and the only other time that this word is used is in the Noah narrative, an ark. So the Hebrew word is not basket. It literally should read, Moses was placed in an ark, and he was put on the water in the reeds. That's literally what it says in Hebrew. which I think is very fascinating. Why do you think that the author, whether it was Moses or somebody else, chose to use that word? They could have used the word for basket. It exists.
Because they knew that Noah was good.
They knew that Noah what?
They knew that Noah's story wouldn't bring up the story of the Ammonites.
Well, right. I think you're onto something, right? If I constantly allude to something, you can do it with like a wink, wink, and a nudge, nudge. You can do it heavy-handedly or gently.
The Bible connects and connects and connects.
Yeah, I think so. So I think the author is using this word to allude us to the new creation. So when God floods the earth, right, it's almost like God is starting over. It's a new creation. And in the same way, here is an opportunity for the Israelites to have a new start. And so the ark is placed in the waters there. We recognize that there was a word, I think in the KJV it said flags. Is that what it was? Which is the word for reeds. It's the same word. It's a loan word, probably from Egypt. And there's this allusion to sort of the sea of reeds. We will discover this later when we get into Exodus some more. That there's some translation differences between the Red Sea or the Sea of Reeds. And a lot of people think it's the same thing. They just call it different things. This is my joke, right? It's the Gulf of America, it's the Gulf of Mexico. It's the same thing, right? So it's the Sea of Reeds, it's the Red Sea. It's the same thing. Don't care what it is on the map, it's the same body of water. So that word, the reeds or the flags, it's the same thing. You can say sea of flags, you would also be correct, but no one calls it that. So those are the first three things out of Exodus. The last three things are the daughter of Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh's daughter saying to this child, right, this was interesting, and then the Moses' name. So we've already talked about this, there's great irony in the storytelling. It's the daughter of Pharaoh who finds the child, and her dad was trying to kill them all, and she finds him, and he's like, oh, what a wonderful turn of fate. Or could it be? As the reader, you're like, how is this going to turn out? It could be a God thing. One would hope God is present in the story about God. Right? But it's interesting, I don't think God's been mentioned yet. Not explicitly. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, not in this story.
Not yet. I don't think so.
Well,
Which doesn't mean God's not there.
way back when, back in about Genesis 3 or so, or 5, they said that at this point, men started looking up to God. God, the boys brought gifts to the God.
That what now?
In Genesis, we heard about God in Genesis.
Oh, yes. I'm not saying the Bible's not talked about God. I was saying so far in Exodus, chapters 1 and 2, we've not heard the word or the name God. Fear not, it's coming. Spoiler alert, right? It's at the end of the chapter. But I'm just double checking myself. The Israelites, too, they were oppressed, the multitude, slavery, king of Egypt, midwives. Now, in 17, it says the midwives feared God. So there's a mention of God.
Also in 23.
In 23, thank you. 22.
23 and 24.
Are you in verse? Are you in chapter 2? Okay, we're not there yet. I know God's coming up. Yeah. But so God's been maybe alluded to. Maybe you could say God's in the background, in so far in our story. Okay.
It gets back to this, that his dad was a Levi. Okay, that's ordained that the Levites are going to be God's people.
Yes, but not yet.
I know.
But yes, I'm with you. I think it's sort of like foreshadowing, right? The author's trying to talk about all these things that are going to happen. And so, he's putting the ark, it goes into the water, and then he goes to the reeds. And there's irony here with the daughter of Pharaoh. She's not the firstborn, but a child of this king finds the child who's abandoned. If you can hear the irony there. So Pharaoh's daughter is able to give an executive order, if you will, like take the child and nurse it, and she'll give him wages. The women in ancient Egypt had a lot of authority, more so than we would think. So it's an interesting evidence for their legal status. And then the Hebrew name Moshe, or this is the Mu, the She, the Mose. You read it this way. The Hebrew name is Moses. It's Egyptian in origin. There are two papyri, which is a papyrus, a scroll paper. There's two papyri from Ramses II that mention officials named Mose. And so this is a loan word. It's borrowed from them. Whether it's that Moses or not, right, we will never know. And they're all dead. And it may not really matter. But it's interesting that his name is attested in other documents outside of the Bible. So we know that happens.
Don't you think it's interesting that, I wonder how she got, all of a sudden says, hey, Dad,
Right?
look who I brought home.
Yeah. This is fine, right?
And he would say, wait a minute, how old is this kid? I just think it's funny that she presented him to Pharaoh later on. He goes, okay. Or maybe he's melding in with all the other kids. I just think it's funny.
Yeah.
He didn't see him as a threat because he certainly wasn't a baby.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting to me that, it just happened.
I guess so. Like the details sort of just, fizzle out into the ether, and we're like, I guess there's some hand waving, right?
Something, yeah.
And now he's 30.
Well,
And
he wasn't a threat at the time, for sure.
yeah. Now I say all that, and it's just interesting to talk about, right? Jesus' story is very similar. Like we get the whole entire birth thing, right? They flee because Herod's trying to kill the babies. They go to Egypt, and then some time passes. They lose him in the temple. He's 12, right? But then all of a sudden, Jesus is a grown man doing ministry, and these stories are I don't know what to say, parallels. I don't feel like that's the right word. They're echoes. We're supposed to see something in them. You're supposed to see something in them. Okay, let's move on. Exodus 2:11-15. One day after Moses had grown up, whoop, fast forward 30, 20, who knows, 10. One day after Moses had grown up, he went out to his people and saw their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. He looked this way and that, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. That a boy. Right? When he went out the next day, he saw two Hebrews fighting. And he said to the one who was in the wrong, "Why do you strike your fellow Hebrew?" He answered, "Who made you a ruler and judge over us? Do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses was afraid and thought, "Surely the thing is known." When Pharaoh heard of it, he sought to kill Moses. Now, what do you hear? What do you see? I highlighted some stuff in red that I thought was interesting.
Moses kind of took charge and made a decision.
He does.
And because he was in the Egyptian arena.
Yeah.
So he took it upon himself to kill somebody, but he made a mistake by being caught.
He should have been trickier. Right?
I didn't think anyone was watching.
I put him in a shallow grave, and I should have just dug 5 more feet.
And all of a sudden he's thinking, guess what? I'm not really part of these people. I'm part of the ones that people, the ones who are working hard.
Yeah.
And he recognized that they were Hebrews.
Yes, he recognizes that they're his people. So his identity really is not really kept secret from him. He's not like, the stories where we adopt the kid and we're not going to tell him that we adopted him. Like he knows he's Hebrew, whether it's because he had the surgery or if, he just looks different or a combination of the things. But here he is having a little bit of identity crisis. Who does he identify with? The Egyptians or the Hebrews, and he sides with the Hebrew people. Okay, other thoughts or things you see?
Well, what if I didn't say this guy?
Yeah.
I wanted you
I'm on your side.
on your side.
Maybe he was hedging his bets. I don't know. I don't know.
Thinking I need a bigger ark.
Yes, right. I can't get all you people in this basket. Cannot. Okay, so a couple things I want to talk about. One is there is the Egyptian beating the Hebrew, one of his own people. We will notice that there are going to be a couple of infractions that happen. A question? Yes. Raise your hand higher. Just don't be ashamed. Go ahead. Well, I only got half of it, but yours is different. Please do. Go ahead and read it.
When Pharaoh heard of this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in Midian.
Yeah, Midian.
Where he sat down by a well.
Love it. Yeah, that's going to be my next slide, I think. Yep, so Moses fled from Pharaoh. He settled in the land of Midian. So, and you'll notice up here, thank you for raising it, and I didn't put it here. This is 215b. And so sometimes, if you guys have, we talked about this a little bit, you might have like headers in your Bible that differentiate a story. And sometimes the verses get cut off in half because it's a new paragraph. And so, but again, we need to remind ourselves that is an editorial decision. So that's not in the original text. If you were to, rewind 2,000 years ago and you found Exodus, it's literally all the words just squished together with no punctuation, no vowels, and no spaces. Right? I know. A disaster. We would say, oh my gosh, but we need to remember, it's crazy to think about things like indents, quotation marks, any punctuation. Those are relatively modern in writing. Did you teach English? No? Okay. Just curious to think about, when did that come about? I remember in seminary I had to read John Wesley's letters. And the Bridwell Library in Dallas, Texas, holds one of the largest collections of Wesley letters. And I'm holding original letters from Wesley. I'm kind of reading them in the archive. And they use the long S in English, if you're familiar with it. It looks like an F. Okay, but it's why did we ever do that? And why did we stop doing it? We need to remember that these things change over time. So thank you for raising the observation that your 15 was different. It's because I cut it in half to capture this thought versus another thought. Okay, so there are going to be a couple of key events in Moses' life where an injustice happens. I'm going to say that word again. An injustice happens, and he responds. So the first one is the Egyptians beating the Hebrew, and he responds by murdering the guy. Okay? And then there's two Hebrews fighting. And he goes in and he sort of breaks up the dispute, the fight. Okay, I'm just saying, there's some massive foreshadowing here. Oh, look, two Hebrews fighting amongst themselves. I wonder what the rest of Exodus is going to be about. And then I love this question they ask us, who made you a ruler and judge over us? It's dude, that's the rest of the book. Moses is going to lead you guys. He's going to be a ruler and judge over you, and you're going to bicker the entire time.
Do you not think that, I would think Moses was not necessarily liked by the Hebrews.
Come on now.
I mean, he was Hebrew, but he was really not part of it.
He could have been seen as a turncoat. Yeah.
He was raised by the Pharaoh's daughter.
His clothes are nicer for sure.
That's right. He lives on the nicer part of town. He went to the good schools.
So I don't know that they would have cared for him a lot. And they say, hey, who are you to tell us that you're a Hebrew, but you're part of them?
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. There's some tension there. And later on, too, we don't want to jump ahead too far, but there's going to be some plagues. And the Hebrew people are going to be like, oh, maybe we should stop. And they go to Moses okay, we were kidding about the whole entire liberation thing. We don't want that. Okay. So I thought this was interesting, right? So then they kind of retaliate back with him. They said, do you mean to kill me as you killed the Egyptian? And Moses is afraid. I just wanted to point it out, right? I often don't think of Moses as having fear. I picture him as a fearless leader, sort of this, ha, in your face, Pharaoh. But he's ugh, and he's afraid. And then he hears that, that Pharaoh's going to kill him. So I'm going to go to the next slide for us, and I'm going to read that. If it's okay. This will be 15b. through 25. This will take us through the end of Exodus chapter 2. Is that right? Yes. We're doing good. Okay, so Moses is afraid, and he hears that Pharaoh wants to kill him. So Moses fled from Pharaoh. He settled in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. The priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock, but some shepherds came and drove them away. Moses got up and came to their defense and watered their flock. When they returned to their father Reuel, he said, "How is it that you have come back so soon today?" They said, "An Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." He said to his daughters, "Where is he? Why did you leave the man? Invite him to share a meal." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave Moses his daughter Zipporah in marriage. She bore a son. He named him Gershom, because when I think what name rolls off the tongue, Gershom comes to mind. Yeah. For he said, "I have been an alien residing in a foreign land." That's what Gershom means. I've been an alien residing in a foreign land, right? He's in Midian. After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out. Their cry for help rose up to God from their slavery. God heard their groaning, and God remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God looked upon the Israelites, and God took notice of them. God decides to act. Cliffhanger. What's going to happen?
So how far away is Midian from?
Wonderful question. We will get there. I'll show a map, yeah. And it,
Also, he was a Levite, but he gave his daughter in marriage to someone he thought was an Egyptian.
where are you at?
It says, under Ruel, it says, an Egyptian helped us against the shepherds. So they thought he was.
They thought he was an Egyptian. Yes.
And so I just think it's funny that he gave his daughter.
Yeah, there's all this sort of intermarrying between different people groups and clans. So Ruel, right, is a Midianite, and the Midianites have a okay relationship with the Hebrew people. Later, I think it's in the book of Judges, the Midianites and the Israelites are going to go to war, so they don't get along later at all.
So they were not Jewish. Were they Egyptian?
I'm guessing. I don't know. I should just say I don't know. I think the Midianites, though, if you asked me in Bible study on YouTube Live and I had to guess, I would say that the Midianites are descended from somebody in the Bible. No, I mean that. You know what I mean? Like you could say, oh, who are the Persian people? Well, the Persians, the Hebrew people don't like them. They're not related to them. But all those other Semitic groups in the near ancient Middle East, those are all descended from Noah or one of, so-and-so's sons, and they go from there.
It says, no, the Midianites were not Jewish, but they were related to the Israelites through Abraham. Yes.
But how?
They were a nomadic tribe who lived in the Arabian desert. They were involved in trade, banditry, and pastoralism.
So they are shepherds. And related, as we heard, to Abraham. We'll have to get. That's right, and we'll have to get the
The
family tree up.
were descendants of Abraham and his second wife, Keturah.
There. That was what I was wondering.
Yeah.
From whom?
So were they Jewish?
Same question.
Well, I guess, yeah, what do we mean by that? No, it's a very good question. I don't know. Do you think, I'm not being flippant. I'm really asking the question. You know how you get the census and you check the box, like I'm white, do you think he would check the box, I'm Jewish? Like, is that his understanding of himself? Yeah.
I think the Jews think that unless you have a Jewish mother, you are not Jewish.
They might think that today, right? I don't know. Did you?
Well, it says the Israelites were descendants of Abraham and his first wife Sarah, and the Midianites were descendants of Abraham and his second wife Keturah. So the Israelites were one wife and the other Midian were another. Abraham was the same guy. But he probably had a lot of.
He had a few wives, which we knew about. And there's some, always some issue in the Hebrew people with their multiple wives, and they have other, and then, yeah, and Esau's over there, Jacob's over here, and, they're Edomites and all those things. All the ites.
Said they were enemies of the Israelites after some Midianite women introduced Israelite men to the worship of Baal.
Well, we can talk about Baal later. It's a naughty cult. Okay. Okay, so a few things that I did not highlight here that I read and I thought about different things, right? So they're watering their flock. Again, I don't have this in front of me. I'm not seeing my notes, right? There's a patriarch who goes to find a wife at the well. They water. Y'all tracking with me? I can't be the only one who thinks this. Help me. Right? Is that Abraham, Isaac, is it Jacob? Jacob and Leah, right? And then they go and he's looking, and then they're watering the flocks. Do you recall the story in Genesis? Yeah. Okay. All right. I just hear that, like, hey, watering flocks around the well, that thing's happened before. Okay. So a few things that I want to talk about are Moses fleeing Pharaoh, the land of Midian. We'll talk about the well. Moses getting up and coming to their defense. We'll talk about Reuel, that guy. And we'll talk about the Egyptian time period. I know you can't hear it online, but that projector is going to explode. It's like maybe if it dies, I'll buy a new one. That's what we need. Okay, so those are the 6 that we'll take a look at. The first one is Moses fleeing from Pharaoh. I think there's a huge theme in the Bible, again, from fleeing. If you think about all the people who flee, Moses flees. Joseph flees from Potiphar's wife. Elijah, the prophet, later he'll flee when Jezebel is mad that all of her prophets are dead on Mount Carmel. And so she goes after Elijah's life, so he flees. Jacob flees from his brothers. Yeah, we got a few here. I wrote Jacob from, thank you. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Jacob from his brothers Esau. Jonah will flee, right? He flees from God. Mary flees. Joseph and Jesus, they flee to Egypt.
That's even interesting, Joseph goes.
Yes.
They keep going back to Egypt.
They do. It's a theme.
But when you look at it, they're just like...
They're right next to each other. Okay, I might start preaching if you're not careful, Because that's what they want to do. The Israelites, right, when they're in the wilderness, they want to go back to Egypt.
Yes.
They keep going back to Egypt. God's not calling them back to Egypt. Why do they keep seeking out what's so comfortable to them? Because it's comfortable. They know it. And God is saying, do you trust me? And they're saying, no, we trust Pharaoh. That dude can run a country. At least Pharaoh has some government assistance, and Pharaoh has, I can get running water. You're going to send me out into the wilderness? That's crazy, God. They keep wanting to go, I'm preaching, right? They keep wanting to go back to Egypt. They want to go back. It's a theme in the Bible. They keep wanting to return.
Well, people like to go where everybody knows their name.
That's right. And we are no different as humans. It's the human story. It's the human story. God is calling us to journey through the wilderness to the promised land. Do you trust Him? That's our story as humans. And we don't. We don't. And when we're in the wilderness, we complain. This sucks. And God's like, deal with it. And you're like, no, it sucks. I want to go back. That's the story. So fleeing is a theme. Jonah flees Jesus. Jacob flees from his brothers. Esau, they flee. Jacob flees from Esau. And they flee to the land of Midian. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll come back. Where is Midian, you'd ask? Wonderful question. It's over here. This is like Saudi Arabia. This is the Arabian Peninsula. And this is Egypt here. I think Ethiopia, Cush, we'll remember, is down here. It's not called Cush anymore. This is the Nile right here coming up and emptying into the Great Sea or the Mediterranean. Later on, the Philistines will come and they will settle in this area right here. And they'll just give David the fits. They can't get rid of them. The people from the sea will settle in here in this area. This is the Dead Sea right here. You'll notice it has no outlet. So the Jordan River comes down from the Sea of Galilee. It means descending, and it empties out into here. But Midian is over here. This is the wilderness to Moses. In particular, though, it's an extension of the wilderness because this is where most of the wilderness wandering happens, in this desert area. And Mount Sinai is thought to be down here. Mount Horeb is going to be up here. I think it's debated. And that's where Moses will get to see the promised land but not be able to enter the promised land, and he will die on that mountain at the age of 120. Or, whatever. Yeah.
Where's the promised land?
This area up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is Canaan, or the land between. And so, right? Yeah, it's Gaza, it's Jordan, it's Gaza, Jordan, Israel. What I tried to do was overlay a current political map, and it's difficult to do, but I'll keep working on it. And we'll continue to familiarize ourselves with this area.
So Joseph was further away from Egypt and Midian than he was when he wandered around the wilderness.
Or Moses, right? You said Joseph, but I'm tracking with you.
Yeah, Moses
Yes.
was further away
Yes.
than when he came back and wandered around and went to the world.
Yes. Now again, I just want to say that I don't read it as like textbooky as that. I think when I read that and it says Moses went to land of Midian, I go, oh, he went far away, over there, that area. So like, could he have been here? Maybe. Could he have been here? Maybe. Could he have been here? Maybe. Right. And his job is he's supposed to just shepherd. He's supposed to kind of walk and guide the flock. But again, they're going to be located around wells because they need to water the flock so the flock will die. And then they're going to have to take the flock to market. And so you can't be a shepherd in the wilderness for forever. Eventually you have to travel back into town to sell your goods. So he is a nomadic shepherding person in this area. Yes?
Where did you say the promised land was?
Yes, that's okay. The promised land is up here. So the promised land is, I'll put it in quotations, the promised land is Israel.
We've got the map on it. Last week we had a handout with the map on it, and it shows Canaan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Israel, but like modern day Gaza is there. But without getting into too much geopolitics, it's that whole entire contested area that they've been fighting over for 4,000 years, and they will continue to fight over it for another 4,000 years until a comet hits all of us and murders everybody. So that's right.
There's a glorious refuge.
Yeah. All right. So I want to go back here. So that's the land of Midian. That's a real place. We'll go back to the map. That's where it is. That's what it's called. You can find it. You can go there, stick your hand in the dirt. It's a real place. And then the well. Well is a theme. Just again, to think about this. Who gathers at wells and when? Women gather at wells. Jesus, right, he is thirsty. He finds the Samaritan woman at the well in John chapter 4.
It's usually the center of town because that's where everyone needs their water.
Okay, so my question here is, what is our culture's equivalent of the well? Because you're exactly right. It has to be accessible. A coffee shop, a mall, a restaurant, right? It could be a popular restaurant. It's like the Oak and Barrel, right? Maybe it's Shepherd's Table.
There probably was a well in the middle of town, but there also was wells all over because they kept digging new wells,
Yes,
audible wells.
yes. There will be battles over, oases.
You can't have a bunch of
Oases.
sheep running through the town to get water because the town folk would just.
It'd be chaos. It'd be chaos. All right. So those are the three things I've seen so far. We'll wrap it up with these three, and we'll be good to go with other questions. So Moses gets up and he comes to the defense of the shepherdesses, right? This is the third transgression. So the first one was let me be specific. The first one was the Egyptian beating the Hebrew. He says, no. The second one was two Hebrews quarreling. He says, no. The third one was Egyptians bullying shepherdesses. He says, no. Right? So the third transgression, and Moses has some sort of innate inability to not take action when he perceives injustice. This is going to be Moses' character. And you could say this qualifies him for the task God has for him. I don't know. I'm not God, right? But God's probably like, this dude's a stubborn mule. I can use this guy. Right? I'm going to use him to go, tell Pharaoh where to stick it. And so Moses he won't put up with the injustices. Now, his father-in-law, or the name of the guy whose shepherdesses are there, is Reuel, or Rule, like Rule King. It literally means friend of God. It's mentioned again in Numbers 10:29. We don't need to turn there. And I wanted to do a little compare and contrast. And we don't have a ton of time for this, but you can just make note of it if you want and look at it. If we consult Judges 4:11, we can do it. Let me read if that's okay with you. Judges 4:11 reads, "Now Heber the Kenite had separated from other Kenites, that is, the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, and had camped as far away as Elon Bez Ananim, which is near." I sound like I'm from the land of Dune, speaking these words, but they're real places. So the descendants of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses. You'll notice that Reuel, or Rule, is not Hobab. Those are different words, different names. So if you compare Exodus 3:1, which is next week, Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. How many father-in-laws can the dude have? So here are some possibilities to consult on why there are textual differences. Right? I loved getting into these arguments when I was in high school. People were like, well, the Bible's made up. Look at all these inconsistencies. And I go, okay, fair. I hear you. It's crazy. I know. But there's more than one possibility other than someone just made it all up. Possibilities are Reuel could be the grandfather, and that's why he's mentioned here. It could be this dude has multiple names. My grandfather's name was Hank. It was also Henry. Right? I'm Joshua. Or, you get all sorts of things. This is apparently called a hypocorism. I looked it up. Okay. Anyways, it's fascinating. I think, too, Henry is also short for William. I know. You double check me. I see the looks of confusion. Maybe. I don't know. But there's you can look at all the different things in English that get shortened. And we know the easy ones like Charlotte, Charlie, Chuck, Bob, Robert, Tim, Timothy. Those make sense. Josh, Joshua, Sam, Samuel. But there are names that get shortened and then they seem to even change. So there's all sorts of them, and maybe Hebrew has those as well. It could be that the author's wrong. Maybe this guy wasn't his name, he just got it wrong. Have you ever been wrong? I've been wrong. Most people today will say that it's a source issue. So it's a tradition. Here's what I mean by that. Is that these stories were told, they were oral tales, and so they were told by different perspectives and sources and traditions. And this is the compiling or the stitching together of those things. I never noticed either. I never noticed. Just hope I don't want to crush your faith. Just hold it. You know what I mean? Just things to hold, things to think about. So you could say a source or tradition is, because Jethro will become the primary source I think that they're going to use. And you could say that became the tradition. But maybe it was different before that. I don't know. And they're all dead. It doesn't matter. Can't ask them. Okay. So after a long time, the king of Egypt dies. Woohoo! And there's much rejoicing. Yay! That's a Monty Python reference. Okay. And then the Israelites groaned under their slavery and cried out, and their cry to help rose up to God from their slavery. So new pharaohs granted amnesty. Y'all, I can't make this stuff up. Parallel current events. It's like when a president comes in, they say, you're pardoned. You're pardoned. It's just, people do it. It's okay. Pharaohs have done it. It's happened for millennia. All the time. So pharaohs granted amnesty. They pardoned prisoners. They freed slaves. They released people. It's what leaders do. And they do it for various reasons. Right? Old Pharaoh dies and they come in and they say, hey, you're free. I'm such a better Pharaoh than that last guy. Why are you in prison? Come on out, right? I could use a guy like you. So these things happen. And then Exodus 4:19 reads, this is in 2 weeks, but we flip ahead. It says, the Lord said to Moses in Midian, so where is Moses? Oh, he's in Midian still. He's going to encounter God next week in Midian. It says, go back to Egypt, for all those who were seeking your life are dead. So Moses took his son, his wife, and his sons and put them on a donkey and went back to the land of Egypt, and Moses carried the staff of God in his hand. So, Pharaoh dies, and God has to assure Moses, don't worry, everyone who wanted you dead, which is namely Pharaoh, he's gone. You can head back now.
It sounds just like when Joseph was up in Egypt with Mary and the baby. And
Yeah.
somebody says, Herod's dead.
Don't worry.
You can go.
The king who was seeking the child's life is dead. You can return. Okay. That's all I have for this evening in those sections that I thought were interesting. Covers chapter 2. Any questions? Lingering things that we should discuss? A comment? Yes, please.
Moses encounters water all throughout his life.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. I think I shared last week, too, that, the passing through the Sea of Reeds or the Red Sea or whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Like, being put in the ark and being delivered out of water, being one who's drawn out of water, this is all a symbol for baptism later, right? The New Testament authors will reinterpret it. He goes in the wilderness, right? He strikes the rock, and water it's living water. It literally saves people's lives.
He waters the sheep.
Yeah, he encounters water everywhere. It's a beautiful motif. Yeah. Thank you for the comment. Anything else I missed or things that we should discuss? Good? Hearts clear? Questions?
It didn't say how long he was in the basket when he went down the
It doesn't. Yeah. In fact, if I read it very differently now. I don't think he was put in the basket like we've seen in the movies and like pumped like out. Good luck. I think he is stashed in the reeds. I think she puts him in the basket. Right, you line the basket so it doesn't take on water, and then they stick it in the reeds because they probably know where Pharaoh's daughter bathes, and they're hoping for the best possible outcome. That's how I read it. I think you could.
The reeds keep it self-contained.
Yes, right, and it's not going to float away because they shoved it in there. Yeah, that's how I interpret that.
According to that little clip last week, he already had Ramses.
Oh, from the studio version.
And they don't even talk about Ramses.
They don't. Yeah. It's interesting extrapolation of thought. Yeah. We'll see how it develops. Yeah, right, for 3 months? Yeah, but because he starts to make a ruckus, as children do. That's good. All right, I think that this story will continue to yield things to us. I think it's amazing that you can read it 100 times and still catch different things every time. And I think it's a very interesting challenge for us, right? You all know things about the Bible, and I know things about the Bible, and we're still asking questions that are hard. Who exactly are these people? Where do they come from? Who are they related to? And it's tough. It's really tough. So we'll bear with each other, and we'll do it together. Wonderful. Let me offer a word of prayer, and then we'll go from there. Holy God, be with us this evening. Bring us rest as we encounter you. As we go from this place and as we go about our day, may we reflect on these things and reflect on your presence in our life. Pray this all in your Son's name. Amen. All right, thanks, y'all. Good to see you.